get started. And Charles has some questions. Go on, sir. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Charles Lewis. My name is Charles Lewis. I'm from Alabama. I'm a senior here on the track and field team. I guess my question is, what is the importance of understanding our family's history and lineage, understanding that our names are not of our own?
You said understanding family history?
Yes, understanding our family's lineage, understanding that our names are not of our own. Lewis is not my original last name. Like, I have the last name, but I don't know what it is.
Right, right, understand.
Well, some of us during the, in the past, during the Black consciousness movement, or as a result of that, we decided to change our names. We decided to adopt the African name. And so for myself, I decided to adopt an African name that came all the way from ancient Egypt, from Kemet. And it was an attempt to self-identify, because I know that these other names, I've kept my, I don't call it some people call it a slave. Now I don't use that term. I call it just the name, my legal name, because that's what's on my birth certificate and my passport and stuff, So, but I think it's important that you know your origins. Recently, I was able to get a DNA test from African ancestry, and it went to the line of my mother, and it went back to Cameroon in West Central Africa, and it went back to a people called the Tikar people. And when I researched who the Tikar people are, they're people who migrated into West Africa from the Nile Valley, right? And so that means that they came from the area which was ancient Egypt. And people left ancient Egypt and went into other parts of Africa. So we as, Black people, we as African Americans, we actually have a lineage that doesn't just go back to West Africa like people try to tell us. We have an ancient lineage that goes back to the Nile Valley, because we are the descendants of people who built the pyramids and did all those type of things, right? So I think it's important that you, you don't have to change your name. You can change your name if you want to, but you should at least know who you are, in terms of reading. And one of the things, I don't want to take up too much time, but one of the things I want to say is, like, you got to read some of these things like this. You can't just go by people talking on videos. A lot of these videos, they making them artificial intelligence generated. You're seeing all these different things, and it's just a lot of it is propaganda. Go back to books and just read and reflect. It takes time.
I think that the conscious movement then and now is very important. Understanding who you are, where you came from. I have a traditional name, African name, and a Kemetic name. But as I said earlier, my precursor was that my family taught me who I was. So because I wasn't pushed to get a traditional name, because I was grown up knowing where I came from, et cetera, et cetera. But it's important that we read, that we look at, and we question. One of my colleagues always say opinion is just that, an opinion. You have to deal with the facts to prove. And that's the important piece now of trying to get away from opinion, and you're in an educational institution understanding how to use those facts. That goes back to the lineage of actually what I am and who and where I came from as a person, and why is that important to me.
If I could just add a little bit to that. Yes, back in the day, we did change, many of us changed our names. I changed my name, my spiritual name is Jabalani, K. Makalani, but that's my legal name is what I publish books under. But the thing is, when you look at the history of Black people, after we were enslaved and brought here, we did a lot of things to resurrect our African culture and to preserve our historical memory. And that is, not only did we take African names, but we also continue to name ourselves in an African way, even though we may have taken European names. So we have to understand that too. My father, I have the name of my father and of my grandfather. And so that's very important. You know, so I'm not gonna, you know, even though I have a spiritual name that's African, you know, I recognize that the name that I was given represented some other things that were very important in terms of family and community. So I wasn't, you know, I'm not gonna throw that away, right? I recognize the importance of that. So you have to look at closely in terms of how you identify and how you name yourself, because it can mean, it can take on great meaning in ways that sometimes we don't even understand, things that we do that we don't understand, you know, that sometimes that we did a long time ago, but we don't even understand how we continue to do that. So it's a lot more complex than most people think, but it's extremely important in terms of how you look at yourself, how you name yourself, what you aspire to be, what kind of values are embedded in that name, and how you are connected to your family and to your community and to your history and to your culture.
In terms of like performing arts and art, like you said that you do dance, do you think it was more of a struggle or privilege to be part of the community that you're a part of? Like sharing, being around like-minded people, like sharing dances and being able to go to Africa and see that. Do you think it was like more of a privilege being in that type of environment at the time, or more of like a struggle, or both?
At that particular time, we talk about the 60s. The 60s was very, very hard, dear. Very, very hard. Nobody was wearing a natural, but I would say Dr. Burroughs, one of my mentors, DuSable Museum founder. So change over completely, my family was laughing at me. I didn't come from a family like Michael is talking about. My ears weren't pierced, you know. I got all those things done. So it wasn't easy, and I wasn't around a lot of like-minded people, you know. I was working a job, and I was teaching dancing, so serious, really interested. I was teaching dancing. And in the daytime, it's 1965, this is my awakening. 1965, I was teaching dancing at a center, and I was wearing a wig. And then in the evenings, on the weekends, I was wearing a natural, because I was performing with Phil Coran, an artistic heritage ensemble. And I was confused, because he was teaching me, he's my mentor, he was teaching me that I have to love myself. And so I needed my ears pierced, I needed to wear natural because I needed to be the natural woman. I was representing black women. But I didn't have anybody else around me, you hear what I'm saying? That was doing these things. I started out as a solo dancer. And I didn't have anybody to push me to say, you go girl. You know, I didn't have that. But thank heavens that I was with a band, Phil Coran Artistic Heritage Ensemble, that taught me to appreciate myself as a black woman. And then I was able at that time to carry that on into my classes that I was teaching my young people, you know, to embrace themselves. And I really am thankful for that, but I didn't personally have that. But I was able to teach a lot of my people that 60 years later, they come back to me and they say, you know, I really helped them. But all the times, what I'm trying to tell you, all the times you ain't gonna have that help. You got to be strong. You have to go ahead and be strong enough and go ahead and just follow your dream. Just like you know, you're athletes. I was an athlete. You just, maybe nobody don't play track but you, nobody don't want to run but you. So you have to run by yourself. You just have to do it. You have to do what you gotta do.
She said, no.
You always have support.
Yes, ma'am. I think one of the things you guys both talked about was how you have to read and inform yourself. You also have to not only be comfortable with who you are, but also stand on what you believe. What are some things you guys will recommend or share with us to do to not only help on our campus, but help us move forward to make change and continue to work on some of the things you guys
I
have?
think the first thing, do you mind if I take that first? Is you have to, first of all, know who you are. Sometimes it's very difficult, but also to be a change agent. If you really want to be a change agent, are you about community or are you about self? And this transcends race. If you not being idealistic, but do you want to make it? Do you want to make a difference? Do you want to make a change? If you see something that's not right, do you let it remain not right, or do you say something about it? Right now, 95% of the time, if there was a fight out there, everybody's gonna go out with the camera and post it, as opposed to breaking up the fight. That's the mentality. You have to believe in what you have to. What's that old saying? You have to stand for something. You stand for nothing. What do you stand for? What is important to you? She's laughing at me. I'm messing with you. What's important to you as a person, as a human being? Where do you think you fit in this particular thing that we call life, on this journey? What is your role in that? You can say that I'm just one person, I don't make a difference. You helping a child, if you're an athlete, you're teaching someone, you see a kid who track, you're younger, whatever, and hey, you might be at a high school, volunteer at a high school, and they may not have shot putting, but you can say, hey coach, can I teach these guys something? And something that you have, it may not be the specific skill you have, but you have something that can translate to something else. You have a work ethic, you have the sense of commitment, the sense of wanting to achieve. You can take, most high schools in Chicago public schools don't teach hammer throw, am I right? They don't teach shot putting, but there's a skill that can translate to something else on that track team. Of showing up for practice on time, right? Though you're an individual sport, you're part of a team, right? So teaching that whole concept of team. Teaching that whole concept of, man, you gotta eat right. Dude, you gotta cut short those flaming hot Cheetos. Let those, I'm sorry. Cut that colored water away. Go drink some water, and talk about that. Just because just because they don't have hammer throwing does not mean I can't teach you something about being an athlete. Does that make sense what I'm saying? And then also about life. Because what you're learning as an athlete also translates to the skill of when you get a job. Just that simple. Translate to a skill of you interacting with your mates, with your significant others. Talking about commitment. How do you talk to your children? Okay, for instance, hey, there's certain things we don't do in our house. If you guys want to throw drugs, if you want to become a thug, not in this house. I don't permit, for instance, you're the mom, daughter, you're not gonna come home and sit in my house with your leg like this. We don't do that in my house. We gotta close them up. You understand what I'm saying? Loosey-goosey. So therefore, those things that you as a human being, there's a value to you, how do you put that onto someone else? Do you care, or do you just want to be just you? and selfishness. That's the point I'm getting to. Do you want to make a difference? Make a difference in yourself, then how do you put that to somebody else?
Yeah, you know, when I started off on my path, it was nobody that I didn't know anybody who was. I became a vegetarian, a vegan. I didn't know anybody. You know, when I met this brother, you know, he was one of the few other vegetarians I knew. When I was in college, I went to UIC, and you know, I saw that there was a need for a Black student organization. So, you know, we started it. It was called the Black Student Organization for Communication. And we fought against, this was in between 1975 and 1978. And we fought against apartheid in South Africa. We fought against the selective index, which we actually fought it back, but they actually put it in after we left because there was no commitment by the other people that came after us to keep it out. The selective index was just a discriminatory policy that limited the number of Black and other minority students that got into the university. So what I'm saying is that you have to take your own path, and you have to be a leader. When I was doing some work, I was with KRS-One. Y'all know who that is? Yeah, that's a rapper. That's probably, they don't know who KRS-One is no more. You know, he's a rapper. He's one of the early rappers, right? And he's one of the fathers of hip hop. So he talked about the principles of hip hop. So what he tried to do was give some principles and some order to hip hop that included some type of a cultural identity, and he included health and wellness, that you have to put an emphasis on your health and wellness, just like we were trying to do back in the 60s and the 70s. You know, you had to have an ethic. I call it the ethic of health, where it's like this is part of your ethical makeup. To, you know, you all are athletes. You have to say, this is part of my value system, to eat healthy, to take care of my body, to exercise, you know, and there has to be a value, part of your value system.
Yeah, I would, all that is extremely important. As I listened, I reflected, trying to reflect on some of the things that I was involved in early in my life that influenced me. And I think one of the earliest things was in Chicago, the school system was extremely segregated. And even when your school was overcrowded in the Black community, you couldn't go outside of your community to go anywhere else because you couldn't go to school with white folks. And they had what was called Willis wagons.
Willis wagons.
And Benjamin C. Willis was the superintendent of schools. And rather than allow for Black people to be able to go to schools that weren't crowded, they would bring these trailers into the community, and you would have to go to your class in those trailers.
Split shift.
Right, or split shift. That's correct. And they were called Willis wagons. So one of my earliest involvement with activism was picketing against those Willis wagons, against the segregated school system. I think I would, and also engaging in, I think there was a boycott in 1963, something like that. I was 13 years old at the time, so it must have been around 63. And then later on, I became involved with the NAACP, and then when I went to college, I did a lot of stuff, but stuff I can talk about. I was suspended from college. We took over a building. Those are all things I can talk about. Other things I can't talk about. We were involved in anti-apartheid movement against apartheid in South Africa. We went to open housing markets to challenge segregated housing. So And then, of course, my involvement with trying to be a scholar in the field of African American studies. But every job that I've ever had, I drew on my past experiences and attempted to challenge things that were wrong. Anytime you had injustice, I challenged that. Now that created a difficult life, teaching over 40 years at 3 or 4 universities. And sometimes I have problems encouraging other people to do that because it can be very painful. But you have to make that decision, you see, and you have to overcome fear. And I've seen people be so afraid, even when they have things like tenure, that they can't act, that they don't want to act. And if we don't do that, we can't change anything. So I talk to you just like I talk to my own kids. You know, I want to see them, be successful, and I don't want to see them get hurt. But at the same time, I want them to stand up when it's time to stand up, and that's why I encourage you to do. When you do that in every aspect, whenever you see something wrong, you will make a difference. You will make things better for somebody.
And you don't just have to be black to stand up. You know, righteousness is righteousness, right? You know, right is right. And so if you stand up for humanity, you stand up for wellness, for health, for equality, and for people who are any oppressed people. You know, that's what you should do. Anybody that's being oppressed, you should stand up for those people, because if you don't, then eventually it's going to wind up being you, because eventually the oppressor, in this country today, there's a movement towards what they call fascism, right? And fascism is what occurred in Italy before World War II, and what occurred in Germany when you had this guy named Hitler. And I know y'all heard of him before. So, that's something that, you have to think about. You need to, we need to create change. And what I don't want to be too long, but the final thing I'm going to say is that, your political activism has to be practical too. You can't just say, I'm not going to vote because nothing, you have to be educated and vote for the right people, or you have to run for office, or you have to get your friend to run for office, whatever. But you have to understand that there is a role for political activism in terms of being engaged in electoral politics. Not to say that it's going to solve all the problems, it's just that there's a role for it. It has a particular place in everything that we do. So you don't look at it as going to solve all the problems, but you look at it as that it has a particular place, and that you should be engaged with that, as well as all the other things that you need to be engaged with. Hope that makes sense.
Can I sum that up, really?
Yes, sir.
You're either part of the problem or part of the solution. Just that simple. Just take a choice. Do you want to perpetuate it, or do you want to solve it? And most of the time, we complain to oftentimes we complain to one another. Y'all talk about stuff that happened in the domes, right? Or you talk about what's happening in this classroom or whatever, and you talk amongst each other, but you don't go anywhere else to change it. So if you're talking about complaining about the issue, stop complaining with each other and go to where the complaint should be. So tell somebody, the three of y'all can't make the change and argue about it. Well, the coach does this, well, then go talk to the coach. Oh, the dorms this, the RA does this, the RA does that. Hey, then go tell on the RA to somebody who's in charge of the RA. And stop complaining amongst yourselves. And go make that change. That's the start. Does that make sense? I guess. Well, I guess because we come from a period where people were protesting. I took over my college campus. I got kicked out of school. All that kind of stuff. But also, I decided we stopped complaining to each other. We wanted to make a change.
Yeah, I was blacklisted when I.
Or tell them, wait a minute. Now, tell them the truth. Tell them about how someone told you had too much education.
Oh. No, they told me, I tried to get it, I tried to,
Northwestern, what?
go to Northwestern, because I wanted to be a journalist, and they told me that I had reached my educational peak. So I was 19 years old. I wanted to transfer there to go become a journalist. They said I reached my educational peak. I couldn't go there.
He was too smart.
But I wound up going to the University of Chicago later and getting a master's degree, but I couldn't go to Northwestern. But what I was gonna say was that I was blacklisted, so to speak, you know, for my activities as a student activist, right? So that when I graduated from the University of Illinois in Chicago with a bachelor's degree in political science, I could not get a job. The only job I could get was filing papers. First I worked in a warehouse, and then I had to file papers. My sister got me a job filing papers, making $3.25 an hour. And I was trying to raise my son and take care of my family.
But it's a sacrifice when you want to make a change. You gotta choose how important is it to you. It's in here. How important is it to you to make a change and to step up and say something?
Yes, sir. We appreciate you guys taking the time out to speak with us. And we actually have a few things for
We're saying we're talking too much.
Can y'all give it up one time for our
Thank you for coming, because you had a choice. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Oh, look
Yes,
at that.
sir.
Cool.
We have a few gifts for y'all.
Appreciate that.
Thank
I know
you.
where it is.
But thank you guys for coming, and I hope we said something that's an interest to you, or maybe spark something, maybe down the line, something we stimulate.
And I have flyers here for you all to come to I have a yoga studio. So y'all people who are athletes, y'all should come to the studio and take yoga. And you should, we teach yoga, we teach, we have dance classes, we have Tai Chi classes, we have martial arts. But yoga is something that you need, that you should do for your health, for your wellness, and also to help to prevent injuries and to help your body to heal injuries. All of as you probably already know, all of the top athletes practice yoga, you know, and meditation. You need it for your mind and for your body. So,
One more
yes.
time for our panelists, please.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for coming. I hope y'all will take the lessons that they taught, right? I heard something about accountability, I heard about humor. The biggest message, I think Dr. Brown said it like 10 times, is you need to know who you are, and you have to have an appreciation for who you are if you expect to be successful. If y'all want to meet them, I encourage you to come up and say thank you personally, but other than that, I hope you have a great day, and I hope you take these lessons to heart.
Now take care of yourself. Be
Thank you very
careful.
much.
Keep your head on a swivel.